groups, you know. And I think a lot of that comes from people being aware that that the traditions that we have are not what's critical. You know, as society became more mobile and people began to venture out of their little communities and out of their Christian communities, or church communities, we've seen more in the from the 80s on, people venturing into religious communities that they didn't grow up in, and which didn't happen quite as much in the earlier parts of our history, and for a lot of reasons. But I think it's been good. I think it's made us all as a nation kind of reflect on what's critical, what's important, and I grew up in a tradition that in the Deep South, where this group was more centralized, they grew up thinking that they were the only ones going to heaven, and the only denomination, even though they said they weren't a denomination, but they're the only ones going to heaven, and that's quite a weight to grow up with. You know?
Chosen few.
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
The chosen few.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. And we were the only ones because of things like we took communion every Sunday. Not everybody did. So you were in danger of hell if you did not take communion every Sunday. And I'm not kidding. Now, I don't know how many people still feel like that, because there has been so much intermingling and changing. But of course, there was the Baptists in, we weren't Baptists, but the Baptists in our communities would tell a joke about this person going to heaven and Peter showing them around, and they would go to, and he'd show them one room and there would be all this hoop and holler, and he goes, that's the Pentecostals, and he'd go to another one, all these different ones, and then he'd go to another one, it's real quiet, and he goes, shh, be quiet, and he goes, why? He says, that's the Church of Christ people. They think they're the only ones here.
This is how they act too. This is how it is.
But anyway, I'll tell you one, and there's a lot. Not everybody thinks that way in the Church of Christ anymore, but. And I'll tell you what, when I go back down south and visit one of the churches, or even the one I grew up in, but especially, you go down and listen to 3,000 people singing 4-part harmony a cappella. It's beautiful. Mm-hmm. And it really is gorgeous, a beautiful thing. So it's a great tradition, that part of it.
That's how the Jews used to think, they were the only one going to be saved. Well,
I'll tell you what, it's a tough burden to bear when you're a kid, knowing that you're the only one and all your school friends are out of luck.
Well, at least no matter what happened on the playground, you always had that to come back with.
Yeah.
I knew a guy who followed sort of a Calvinist idea, and he was explaining to me that God had a set number of people that were coming in, and you either were or you weren't, but you didn't know if you were or not, even if you were a Calvinist. I was like, so what's the point? And he had a long, convoluted answer.
Yeah, oh yeah, the whole Calvinist thing is...
Yeah. Somewhere it says about the 144,000.
Yeah, I heard that one
yeah,
before, too.
yeah. So everybody wants to be one of the 144,000.
Oh, that's open a number?
Yeah,
How
it's
many people?
somewhere in the Old Testament about.
Dave, it was something
Where it is.
said the phrase like
Yeah, you have to
about
scratch
God.
and
He
claw
said,
your way
"Voice
past
about
everybody else to
Jesus
make
said,
sure they're
Yeah, right.
Why would God give us the will to live if he wanted us just to be totally destroyed? You know what I mean?
How many people have been on
There's
Earth?
a lot of questions
You know,
about
since
life.
day one. It's like hitting the lottery.
Yeah, really.
Well, way back before this weather started on Monday, Monday was a really nice day. And Jack and George and I had a great time. We went down to see my mom and dad. They're living in Annapolis now. And had a good time. Got to see mom and dad. And I was thinking about it today. I was thinking it didn't seem like it was just a week ago because of all this weather. But, you know, when you're, I mean, fortunate to have both of my parents, but they are getting up there in their 80s. And reminded me of these three sons who got, three brothers who got together because they only had their mother, and she was elderly. And they had all become pretty successful, and they had lost their father, so they said, you know, let's do something great for Mom while we still have her. So they said they would get together. They lived in different parts of the country. They got together a year later to see what they'd come up with, and one brother said, I'm gonna buy our house. Has anybody else? And they said, no, that's cool. And the other brother said, you know, I did some research and found out when Mom was young, she really loved sports cars. And I'm gonna get her the nicest sports car, you know. And the other brother, the youngest one, Donald, said, well, you know, I know Mom loves to read the Bible, and she can barely see anymore. She doesn't see well. And he said, I did some research, and I found this parrot that has been trained and is memorizing the entire Bible, and all you have to do is say the book and the chapter, and the parrot can recite the entire chapter. And they said, that's amazing. So they gave her the gifts, and then they all went on their way, went back home, and a few months later, she wrote them all, and she said, you know, I love all the gifts, but I have to tell you that the house really is just too big. And to the second son, she says, the car is beautiful, but really is too small. And to Donald, she said, Donald, your gift was the simplest, but it is the most precious to me. And she said, I just want you to know the chicken was delicious.
She couldn't see what it was.
I know. He scares me. He
I
can't reveal his source.
have my secret sources. It's probably better than the lawyer joke I was going to tell. I'll say that for another time.
I do have to say, one year for Christmas, so we got a book of jokes, so, from them.
It is one of my sources. Those are shorter ones. But welcome to the Love Your Life workshop. Love who you are. Be the person you love. So we strive to be the person that we most want to be. And each day we strive, or hopefully that this is an encouragement each day to nurture, that is, feed good things to our heart, our soul, our strength, and our mind. You know, each day to think about how can I strengthen and nurture my heart, soul, strength, and mind, so that I can love myself, love my neighbor. And I think in doing so, then we have a tangible way of loving God. This morning I want to talk about, is showing your best stuff. Show your best stuff. This is what came to my brain. Show your best stuff. Jesus, you know, went to this wedding, and this wedding feast, which they say lasted for days, and then they had the embarrassing moment that they ran out of wine. And Jesus had not yet really shown who he was, and his mother was there, and she, of course, knew who he was, or knew there was something about who he was, and so she said, tell him, he'll take care of it, you know, and so he ends up, as we know, changing the water into wine. And the guy who was like the most distinguished person there, he's just amazed because they saved to the end. They saved their best wine until the end. You know, they brought out the best stuff. So when Jesus didn't just make wine, he made good wine. You know, he made the best. And in life, I find that our lives are a mixture of good and bad, even in what we produce every day. And every day we have the potential of really being at our worst and our best. Very often we're kind of just in the middle. But we have that potential, you know. And sometimes that's frustrating because I want to feel like every day I'm just going to get better and better and better. And probably for each one of us, if our intent is to be the person that we most want to be and to love God with our heart, soul, strength, and mind, probably if we took a big step back and we could be objective, we would see a big difference over who we were a year ago or 2 years ago or 5 years ago. You know, but sometimes when you're right in the middle of it, you can get discouraged and think, well, I'm not making enough strides. I'm still doing some form of this stupid habit or way of thinking or way of treating people that I've been battling with my whole life. And yet, we are making progress. But one way to deal with our life situation, one way to deal with, you know, things that happen, like when there's no more wine, is to show your best stuff. Show your best stuff. Every moment, every new moment in the day is an opportunity to provide your best or show your best. Because life is full of, every day we kind of bring with us sometimes yesterday's failures. You ever carry along yesterday's failures with you into the new day? And yesterday could be 30 years ago, or it could be yesterday. We also deal with today's messes, you know, and we also deal with difficult people. Am I the only person that deals with difficult people? It's all those other people. All those other people. And I'm so glad I'm not one of them. But we have that. We carry along yesterday's baggage, yesterday's failures. We have messes today, some of which we create. We don't create them all. Then we have difficult people. And how and all that. But if we could see those as opportunities to show our best stuff. I think there's a way of seeing when Jesus said repent, he was calling people to show their best. When Jesus was even calling these people hypocrites today, you know, they thought they were showing their best by the way they dressed and the way they did follow all the traditions. And I think there's a way in which Jesus was saying, that's not your best. That's not who you're really made to be. That's not your best. When he talked about love, when he talked about showing compassion, so talking about showing your best stuff. When he talked about faith, you know, he's looking for somebody of faith. And he said to his disciples, do you still have little faith? You know, that inside of you is something that it needs to come out. It's your faith, and that's your best stuff. I love the story where he's watching, they're by the temple, and all the people are putting in all their money, and the poor woman comes in and puts in all that she has. And he says, look, she gave more than anyone else. You know, she, in a sense, she showed her best stuff. Now, when we show our best stuff, it always illuminates our heart. It always illuminates our heart. We're always living more from our heart when we show our best. You know, and when we get into this this kind of just like living and doing okay or getting by, being mediocre, you know, if we stop and think about it, we know that we're not really illuminating or showing or displaying our heart. You know, why is that so hard? You know, why is it so hard to really show your heart? But we kind of get caught up into that trap, that it's hard, or people don't want to see that, or it's uncomfortable, or, you know, what does that look like? And yet, when people really live from their heart is when everybody else is so encouraged, you know, and uplifted by that, and so touched by that. Just one simple act of somebody showing their best, and it can make our day. You know, it can change us. I think when Jesus said, let your light shine, that's what he said. Show your best. Let your light shine. Now, he didn't say let your light glare. you know. It's not a matter of putting it in people's faces, but letting your light shine, show your best stuff. Now, for a light to shine, and I think that that's saying that each one of us have a light to shine. You know, and I don't know how you define that. I've probably defined it in different ways in the past. But letting your light shine is more about your character and your heart than it is about some great act. And very often the greatest acts are the most simple ones. Jesus' great act of changing the water to wine, we can get kind of caught up in the miracle of it, and yet it was kind of unknown. To all the people there was just, they brought out great wine. You know? And so yours and mine little acts of light may not draw so much attention to us, because that would be kind of glaring. That can become glaring. But it's just little ways of living with our heart and showing our best stuff. But it happens in darkness, right? I mean, we have these lamps here, and today I can turn them on. It doesn't do much, but you come in the evening, you turn on these lamps, it makes a nice, calm look, but it provides light, right? So shining your light is most effective in darkness. And the darkness that we face, you know, and it doesn't have to be extreme darkness like the feeling the presence of evil, but the darkness is in my life is brought about by dragging the baggage of yesterday. About failure provides darkness, you know, in my heart and in my attitude. Or the messes that I encounter during the day, or difficult people that I encounter during the day. That's the darkness. And that's when we're called to show our best and to shine light in those situations. I like Peter in first. We have two letters from him, 1 Peter and 2 Peter, and in one in the first book he talks about our faith being refined like gold, refined by fire. You know, and so I think about our light being our faith, you know, and our faith being who we are and how we live, being the person we most want to be. And that gets refined by fire or by darkness. Not just simply like, okay, today I'm going to go out and just be this wonderful person. But it means that as situations arise, as failure tends to follow us, you know, and as messes creep in during our day. And don't messes just sometimes just pop up out of nowhere? We don't get a lot of advance warning for a lot of messes. You know, and difficulties that we encounter sometimes with people. Those are things that refine us. And see, if I can just remember that, you know, I'm not perfect at it, but if I can remember it, then instead of reacting at a moment, I can kind of take a deep breath and realize, hey, you know, this is a chance to show my best stuff. And not to bring glory to me, but because this is who I most want to be. This is a chance. And so he talks about being refined by fire. And in his second letter, he says, look, take your faith, and if we use that, take this desire to be this person, and to follow this direction, and add to that, and all these things that we add to it, and he says we add to that goodness and knowledge. And so I think about what we do is we have this desire to be the person that we most want to be. This person made in God's image. And so we keep moving towards this direction. And as we add knowledge and continually look and seek for wisdom in our lives. And then he says two things, self-control and perseverance. And I think part of showing our best, we bring those two things in our life, self-control and staying with it. Well, why is it so hard to stay with it? It's because we are bombarded by these things. You know, I don't think that we ever can just get to a point where we don't have failure. We may define failure a little differently, but I just don't think we ever get to a point in our life where we don't someday drag along yesterday's failure. you know? And it may be, the failure may be the thing that we wish we had said that we didn't say. Or the thing that we did that we wish we didn't do. It may be a big failure, maybe a little failure. We never get rid of the messes. We never get rid of the difficulties. But perseverance is staying with it and trusting our direction and who we've decided to be. And trusting that God's way works. So I just say that because sometimes it can become discouraging. We want to throw our hands up and say, what does it matter? What does it matter to try to do right? Because I keep failing. I'm not perfect, you know? And messes keep cropping up in my life. And you know, we have unfortunately sometimes this idea that, boy, if I just followed God, everything would work out right. I just don't see that happening. I don't see that, you know. So, to stay with it, self-control, perseverance, and these things will stay with us and will grow. And then if we take a step back, we'll see that they grow. So if I can learn to see the messes in my life as opportunity to show my best stuff, it gives me perspective. You know, there's a lot of messes in our life that we have no control of, but there's a lot that we do. And have you noticed, I think there's a lot of things that happen in our day and that become like a little spark that people just keep throwing fuel on the fire. And sometimes we do. Sometimes we do it with just talk. You know, I can see people get at work and, you know, a little thing that sometimes if you just dismiss it or let one person handle it, it'd be fine, but then everybody starts throwing into, before you know it, everybody's upset about something that don't even know what it is hardly. But life's that way sometimes, isn't it? We dwell on something, and we keep throwing fuel on it, and then before you know it, it explodes, and you're like, it was really such a little thing, you know. But those are opportunities that we have to show our best stuff. I remember once, just popped into my head, I was a youth pastor for our church, and we spent a day on our church property clearing brush, and we were building a sand volleyball court. And we were on a road, and we had a big building, a large building where our school and our church, and then behind that was a home, a house, and then behind that was a field. And so we had gathered all this brush, had a mountain of brush back in the field. So it was quite a ways off the road. And now up closer to the road, by the end of the day, we had this brush, and we were going to have a bonfire. And I was with the group where we had a backhoe digging and putting in the sand volleyball court. So I was by the backhoe, and while I'm at the backhoe, fire trucks come in. And they come around to the back, and I look, and there's a fire in the back, and the brush is all on fire. I had my back to it. I was by the backhoe, hadn't heard anything. Well, these kids decided that, you know, we need to light this bonfire. They went and they found in the house, in the garage, big jugs of gasoline. They poured all around this thing, and they lit it. It's no wonder one kid had all his hair singed off, and it was a wonder nothing worse happened. But it was so loud, people across the street in apartments heard this noise that sounded like an explosion and called the fire company. That's why the fire, and I'm standing, we're all oblivious to it, just watching the backhoe. Well, the fire chief was not amused. You know? But here's with just a little bit of fire, you know, we could have started this thing. But here, they just poured all this fire, and it started an explosion, you know. Anyway, it popped in my head. But sometimes our days are like that. We just have this simple, it should be a nice little thing that we're done, and it just explodes, you know. But really, it is a time, no matter what we face in a day, we have this opportunity to show our best stuff. And sometimes it takes just thinking about the self-control of thinking about it and staying with it. I think about Jesus talking about, we're talking about rules. And when Jesus would talk about turning the other cheek, someone hits you on one cheek, turn the other. If somebody presses you to go 1 mile, go 2 miles. If somebody wants your shirt, give them your shirt, but give them your coat as well. And I heard those discussed all my life, almost like they were trying to understand them because we wanted to apply them as hard and fast rules. But I think maybe Jesus would say, no matter what comes at you, how difficult people are, you can still show them your best stuff. They can't take your life away from you. They can't take your character away from you. You can still show them your best stuff, even in these difficult situations that you face every day. He said, everybody has their oaths, and they swear by this and by this. You can just say yes and no. And what does that say? That says the power of your word. You can just say yes and let that be yes, and no and let that be no. That's your best stuff. It's coming out through your simple word. And I love the one where he says, maybe you're presenting your gift at the altar, and you remember somebody who has something against you. Well, it seems like it would be their job to take care of it, right? They have something against it. He says, no, leave your gift. Before you give your gift, go and take it. Now, I never heard a sermon about this because I don't think really many ministers knew, or church leaders really like the idea of telling you, don't put your gift in. Go take care of all your stuff first before you do that. But this is what, Jesus said, show your best stuff. Go and take care of this relationship. Then you come and give your gift. Do this religious thing. So show your best stuff. And finally, he said this amazing thing. He said, love your enemies. Love your enemies. So even when it comes to people that we designate as our enemies for whatever reason, he said we can show our best stuff. Now, are we capable of hating our enemies? Yes. Are we capable of being bitter towards our enemies? Yes. We're capable of all that, and we may fall into that and drag those little failures with us. We may run into messes with our enemies. They may become difficult people. He says, but you can love your enemies. And he says, you know what? When you love your enemies, he goes, that's what God is like. It's what God's like. So when we show our best stuff, not only are we just, don't let it be a weight, don't let it be a burden, but let it be an opportunity to reach down and live from your heart, and it will actually relieve your burdens. It will relieve your failures. It will relieve the stress. It may not fix all the problems, but it will relieve it because we're actually participating in God's nature when we do that. We're becoming more like Him. Remember the story of Genesis. Let's make man in our image. Let's make man in our image. So I think that when we have this opportunity to show our best stuff, and it may be a simplest little thing that nobody really sees or knows about that much, but we know it. And we're participating in eternity. We're participating in the nature of our Creator. And that's an exciting thing. So that can bring light to our day and change the world around us. All right, so use your problems, your situations, your problem people as an opportunity to show your best. Live from your heart. All right? Got it? All right, let's pray. Lord, thank you again for the sunshine today that we have here. And Father, pray for patience for every single one of us and perseverance as we go through our week and as we go through today, to allow little moments, Father, for our best to shine out in each little moment. And even when we fall and even when we fail, to use